There's a Senate companion bill, and I was afraid you were going to ask me the number because I think it's 760, but I'm not exactly sure.
Well, then that will let the viewers weigh in and call their local representative and say, where is the interlock bill, and what's its number, and we want to testify in support.
Great.
So that would be good. Now, tell me if you can go on with the legislation. Who is affected? When will it start? I mean, you said it won't actually start till this new law is implemented that sets up the actual framework. So we wouldn't expect to see these in cars, except for Leah's, until 2011?
2010 or perhaps January of 2011.
Okay.
That's being discussed now. If once this bill is amended and passed, I'm talking about HB 981, which is in that process right now, it will allow the Department of Transportation, which will be the lead agency in implementing ignition interlock, to begin developing the administrative rules. And almost with any bill involving something new in any state, the administrative rules are the really, really hard part. Once the legislature has decided that something will be law, then somebody has to go out and write the rules.
That's correct. And usually that rulemaking process takes about a year.
Exactly.
But the problem that when you show the graph, and when they showed the graph earlier on the screen, it shows how we have really a serious need to have this kind of device in people's cars where there's been a DUI, where that person has been found to be driving under the influence of alcohol. So let me just go to Leah. If you could explain again a little bit more in detail how you would avoid people cheating on this system.
Well, and like you said,
and show it again, because
this technology,
this is in the car.
This is in the vehicle. So this you don't see. This goes behind the dash. This is what's actually out in the vehicle. There's so many things in place, and the reason why all these safeguards are in place for cheating is because years and years and years ago, interlock was around. The problem is you could use forced air. You could hold it out your window in the car, and the air going through would read as a test. So it was so easy to get around it. Nowadays, it's not that easy. Like Arkie said, the camera is one of the biggest things. So you're able to put a camera up on the dash so you know who's blowing into it. So if the offender is blowing into it, it snaps a picture. If your child is blowing into it, it snaps a picture of your child, and then it'll be penalties for trying to circumvent the device. There's also a blowing pattern. So you don't just take a deep breath and blow into it. There's example for this machine, it's actually a humming pattern. So you have to hum for a certain amount of time, then blow. It's very complex. It took me a very long time to understand it, but it helps because you can't just have anyone do it. Then there's also things such as...
I see what you're saying. You mean that the pattern itself would be complicated enough?
Yes.
You couldn't just say to a child, come over here and blow into this.
Absolutely. And children do not have the lung capacity to be able to use this device either. So there's definitely a lot of safeguards. There's also what they call a rolling retest. Rolling retest means that after you start your car, once you're driving, it's going to ask you to test again. So there's a certain amount of time you have to pull over to a safe location and test again. That's to prevent, let's say you have your brother who knows how to do the blowing pattern, blows into it, starts the car for you. Well, if your car and you're 5 minutes down the road and it asks you to test again and you have been drinking, then when you test, it'll show a fail, and what'll happen is it won't lock out your car because, of course, that's not safe if you're driving. But what'll happen is some states have it so that your horn starts to go off, your light starts to flash. All these different things start to happen to alert police that you're driving impaired. And so there's a lot of new safeguards in place with the new devices that weren't around 20 years ago. So it's
interesting. The technology wasn't there. The desire to do this was there.
Absolutely.
But not with the technology that would really make sure that the system would work and it would accomplish what we wanted to do.
Absolutely.
Which is, do either of you know what is the likelihood if someone has been convicted of driving under the influence? What is the likelihood, without some sort of deterrence like this, that they will just turn around and go back and do it again?
You mean after the sentence, after they've gotten
No, leave an interlock out. Say that we went back to laws before we had this kind of a device, and what was happening with someone that would be arrested for driving under the influence? What was the deterrence, and what was the likelihood that they would go back and do it again?
On a national level, and we're pretty close to what national level is that 25% of DUIs, driving under the influence cases, are repeat. So that means they have at least one prior offense when they get pulled over again. But the statistics show that people, when they get pulled over that first time, that is not the first time that they've driven drunk. It's highly, highly likely that the research shows they've driven drunk at least 87 times before getting caught. And so, of course, there's some research that shows higher, there's some that shows lower, but the bottom line is that people that claim it's the first time they've ever driven drunk, or someone with 3 DUIs who says, I've only driven drunk 3 times in my life, it's really not supported by any research. The research really shows that people drive drunk many, many times before they're ever pulled over that first time. So we try and actually avoid first-time offender and say first-time arrestee, because in reality, it's not the first time they've offended, it's the first time they got caught.
Well, then go into the likelihood of accidents being caused by someone that is driving under the influence, someone that's driving drunk.
Well, you just look at, I mean, there's been quite a few cases. There was actually recently on the Big Island, there was another one where someone was driving on a suspended license. Their license was suspended because of a DUI. He was driving on a suspended license. Obviously, he had no license, but didn't care, drove anyway, was driving impaired, and killed his passenger. And so, I mean, it happens because people are not deterred by license suspension. There's so many people, 50 to 75% of people will drive on a suspended license and have no problem with that. So it's obvious that license suspension is not the answer. It's something that we thought in the past might have been a deterrent, but the reality is many people will continue to drive even though their license is not there. They could care less if that little piece of plastic is in their wallet. In their minds, if they need to get somewhere, they're going to drive to go there.
Could I add one thing to that? And I think we forgot to mention this at the beginning when we showed that chart, but the chief impetus, in my opinion, for the passage, unanimous passage by the legislature last year of Act 171 and its signature by the governor, was that in the most recently measured period, which is 2006, Hawaii was the worst state in the nation in terms of the percent of traffic deaths which were alcohol related.
Oh my goodness!
We were the we were the absolute bottom, and this galvanized, this helped galvanize everybody into action.